Hi, this is Jeff here on Spaces or Laces, part of Southbound Sports. I'm my cousin Richie on tonight. We're going to talk a little baseball, football. Just want to have some friendly conversations about current events in the sports world. First thing I wanted to start with tonight, I wanted your thought on Rich Hill and last night against the Pirates. I don't know if you saw that. Have you any thoughts on that?
Well, the Pirates have been letting me down basically the past month or so. They had a chance. They were playing nobodies every week or every series. They had a chance to pull back in. Then they come up against the Dodgers, and it's too little too late. I think that he had a no-hitter going into extra innings. And
yes.
I think the night before they went into extras too and they lost. Just not enough. And I've talked about holding out hope. Maybe the Pirates are going to pull it off. But at this point, I don't think they are. So it's cool that they got a win. At that point, they're going for history. The guy's trying to do a no-hitter, whatever. If they would have lost, no big deal. I think those are good accomplishments for the pitcher. And I think it's amazing that someone can even go throw a complete game these days, let alone a no-hitter, and just keep that running because of the way everyone seems to be babied. I think that's why there's a lot more injuries, too. Too much. You can only throw 50 pitches a game. The arms aren't strong enough. They're only pitching like once every 8 days or whatever it is, 7 days, 6 days. The rotations are bigger than they used to be. So someone going the distance is impressive. Good for the Pirates to get the win, but one win isn't going to cut it. What do you think?
Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to mention so the listeners out there know. Apparently, he was the first pitcher in MLB history to lose no-hitter on walk-off home run in extra innings. And like you mentioned, it's honestly extremely impressive that he went that far. It makes me mad in the MLB, like you stated. In the last couple of years, you get to the 80, 90 pitches, and the manager's going to pull that starter out. Even relievers who have 30, 40 pitches, they're looking for the next reliever, looking for that one-on-one matchup, the lefty on lefty, righty on righty. It doesn't make sense to me. I like when the managers trust their athletes, trust their pitchers to go the distance, win that for them. But unfortunately, it didn't pay off this time. I think that's a huge mistake by the manager. He went all 9 innings. You got to put someone else in extras there. And Josh Harrison came through for the Pirates. Got a huge, hit, home run, walk-off, won the game. It doesn't make sense as a manager not to pull him there. I think 9 innings, I like to see my starters, if I was a manager, to go 6, 7 innings consistently. Obviously, that doesn't happen. For the Pirates a couple of years ago, Locke was going 4 innings at best. Every time Locke was pitching and the opposing team saw him for the 3rd time, they would tee off on him. So that was very frustrating as a Pirates fan, obviously. But I like, as a manager, Clint Hurdle did it with, a couple of times with Garrett Cole in the last couple of years, ride him through 7 innings, 8 innings. I like that. I think that's what you need to do as a manager. But unfortunately, this time, they let him go a little too far. Apparently, it was on the 99th pitch, too. So as a manager, you're thinking, he's under 100 pitches, right? That's like the milestone, I'd say. The golden number anymore is like 100 pitches managers usually stick to pull someone. So I guess he thought he was under that. Let's keep riding him as long as we can. But unfortunately, this time, just a little too long.
Well, they used to do 120, I think. The number seems to keep dropping and dropping. And the pathetic thing for the Pirates, you're letting a guy go into the 10th inning only throwing 90 pitches? Are they swinging at the first pitch all game?
Yeah.
Is there not anyone that can take a pitch? I know normally, just playing college ball, if you're getting past the 3rd inning, and the pitcher's not having any long stretches where they're throwing 20 pitches here or there, they make you take the first pitch. Why aren't the Pirates doing that? Take a pitch, take 2 pitches even. Get him tired, worn down, because if they're going to ride him the whole game, that's how many even outs? I can try to do this math in my head, but 20, I'm going to sound like an idiot.
27 for 9 innings.
Yeah, so that's only 4 pitches an out? 4 or 5 pitches, that's not, you're swinging at the first or second ball a lot of times if that's how many pitches he's averaging. And that means they're not even making contact. They're not fouling the ball off Because if someone's up there battling, they could have 7, 8, 9 pitches themselves that they're fouling off. So they're not even making contact, it sounds like. I didn't catch the whole game. I saw bits and pieces. I actually fell asleep whenever it went into extras. Was that yesterday, right? I can't even remember.
Yeah.
Too many extra inning games, and it's a West Coast game. Today was at 4 o'clock, so that messes up with the time a little bit, but I don't know. And I don't even know what they're going to do because the Harrison thing, he was mentioned in trade offers and stuff. I didn't even think he was on the block. Like, yeah, I was worried about McCutchen, and then the owner's like, well, we've decided not to trade Josh Harrison. I was like, why are you even thinking of trading him?
Yeah, it was 2 years ago. We finally gave him the big contract he deserved. He was batting over 300. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. Gave him that contract. I think we signed it when we were in Cincinnati, if I remember correctly. That's his hometown. And 2 years later, looking to trade him. That's we keep talking at volumes and volumes about it. But the Pirates, they just do enough to stay relevant to sell tickets. When you're considering trading, two of your better players, trading players to important pieces of the franchise, they do it year after year, and it's honestly sickening. But it was crazy today. I was thinking about it. I was getting a lot of hope. I didn't even realize they were playing at 4 today. But when I came home after work, I went to look at the score because I thought they were currently playing, and I saw they lost, and I was really, really angry because I thought I was going to eat my words. The other night I said, put the flag at half mast. I really thought, though, after that last night, that's a huge momentum swing for a team. When you're battling the best team in baseball, taking the extra innings, you're getting crushed by the opposing pitcher. Pretty sure he had a perfect game going through 7 or 8 innings, no hitter into extra innings, and then you pull it off with a walk-off. I thought that was the spark maybe because they were like 8 games back, 7 games back. After losing today, they're 8.5, so I thought that might have been the spark for, maybe a little Buccos, Bucktober, as they like to call it in Pittsburgh, but I don't see it. I think we're gonna see them, dwindle here at the end and not make the playoffs once again.
Well, whenever you're looking at just the Cubs are on an 8-2 streak, and I mentioned it on the big show that we do live Tuesday nights. If you look at the Pirates' schedule, they have 2 series against the Cubs. They're falling so far behind now, they could sweep them and still be 3 games out. So It's probably time to go ahead and put that flag at half mast like I've been trying not to do. But whenever you're losing series against the Giants, it's over because they're pathetic. So
yeah, Rick made a great point the other night. They had an opportunity against the Giants and some of those weaker teams in that division, and we essentially got blown out by them. When you can't beat the mediocre teams, you can't expect to make the playoffs. And the Pirates all year, I know you mentioned it too, they've been playing up to their competition. Dodgers, best team in baseball, taking them to extra innings, winning those tough overtime games. Then we play the lesser opponents like the Giants, and we're getting blown out of the ballpark. You can't be successful when that happens, week after week, all year long.
Yeah, but I don't know. Just looking at it, it's kind of disheartening because I just don't think there's a culture of winning there. It's almost like you have to clean house again. You can't bring in ownership and say, hey, we're going to pay, and I mentioned it before, and then they don't pay. But even then, you have to bring in guys that are used to winning. You can't be trading for veterans from other losing squads just swapping picks because it doesn't make sense. And we can even use this to segue in because me and you were talking before the show, kind of like the Steelers did. Me and you both agreed that the secondary looked awful. You were there in person, and now the Steelers are trading for a guy I've never heard of. Another cornerback they traded, it was a center I've never heard of, for a little bit of, I guess, cornerback competition, depth. Based on the guy's stats, it looked like he played mostly special teams. I could be wrong. He only played, this is his 3rd year. Played for the Redskins both years, but it's kind of like feeling, hey, a little bit too late. You had a chance to get better secondary after you saw the issues last year, and you didn't. You can't do it in preseason. I don't know what you think, but to me, that's crazy.
Yeah, I feel like that's a little too late. Just for listeners out there, the guy's name is Deshaun Phillips. like you said, I've never heard of him. I've never heard of the center we traded for him. So, in my opinion, if I don't know the center that the Steelers are trading for him, he's not going to be a very valuable asset to the team. And I think it was kind of just a wake-up call for that secondary. It's like, all right, guys, we're not happy. We're bringing someone in fresh, make a little friendly competition, but I don't see him. Maybe he'll come in the nickel, but I don't see him starting for the Steelers. I just think at the end of the day, for that defense, Cockrell's going to have to step up. He didn't do that. He got exposed bad in that preseason game that, last week against the Falcons. And, we mentioned Julio Jones wasn't playing. I know Matt Ryan, though, was throwing the rock around, and he looked damn good. He really did. He looked, mid-season form in that preseason game, which if you're a Falcons fan, you have to be excited about. Being a Steelers fan, I am petrified of that defense right now. I know it'll be a lot better, we bring the front seven. I truly believe that, the Steelers have a pretty decent defense. And, once you get, the starters in there, and I think it'll be a little different, but just watching that game, you got to be concerned about the defense.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff they gave up was to Sanu. He looks good. I don't know if he's a clear number one. So if he is, let's say he would go to a new team, is he going to be that good as a number one? I don't know, but he looked like he would be against the Steelers. That's what's scary, because he might only have the talent to be a number two wide receiver. And if the number two guy is tearing you up that bad, like you said, Julio Jones, he wasn't out there. Why were they not double covering him, doing something, like giving him space? I don't know if they were trying to just do easy looks because it's the preseason. I don't know. That's me being an optimist, though, because most likely they're not going to be doing that.
I'd have to say, though, based on my experience in football and everything, like being a preseason game, and from what I saw, they did a lot of base looks, so they weren't doing any exotic blitzes. They weren't trying to figure things out. They basically put everyone out their position and was like, all right, show me what you got. And Cockrell didn't show me much. It looked like they played a lot of base defense, cover three stuff, man to base, all the basics, but he wasn't showing me anything. And like you said, I think Sanu is a solid two. He's not a number one in the NFL, especially when you got guys like Antonio Brown, Julio Jones. He is clearly not on that level. And for him to put on the show like he did last weekend, that is very disheartening as a Steeler fan.
Yeah, it's crazy. And looking into next week, I think I said I predicted Bell would be back for the fourth preseason game. I heard that he's not coming back until September, right after that game. Mm-hmm. So he might not have any game reps. Or, Le'Veon Bell, I think that's what I said. Hopefully I'm not talking about the wrong guy here, but I think he tweeted out that he's coming back in September, the day after the Steelers' last preseason game, which I know the first week's against the Browns, they'll probably, that's definitely a favorable matchup, but I would have liked to see him get a series or two. Just get some game rep. Like, why put your team out to dry? Maybe I was like, I don't know, I don't want to, it's not like overestimating him, but maybe I thought he was more of a team player than that. I was giving him more credit than what he deserves, it looks like. I thought he had it planned out where he would come back in time. Ben Roethlisberger, he's resting anyway. Does a running back really need to be at practice? I don't think there was any major coaching change shakeups where he has to learn like totally new schemes or anything. He probably already knows the playbook. He knows the drills they're doing. He can do them at home by himself. He just shows up, gets a couple game reps in preseason, and he should be ready to go. He's a running back.
Yeah.
He's not on a line where he has to coordinate with four other dudes, blocking schemes. He just has to run through the hole. And I don't know. I would like to see him get game rep, and he didn't, or at least it looks like he's not going to. Yeah. I don't know what you think about that.
See, my opinion differs from you in that respect. I don't really care if he gets any game reps in the preseason. I don't want him touched in the preseason. He is, our franchise running back. Like, with running backs, it's a whole different game. If it was a quarterback, like you said, a lineman's a great example. I want my lineman out there reps with the first team. to build that chemistry, because it's needed on the offensive line. Le'Veon Bell's job is to, get the ball, find the hole, make those explosive jump cuts, gain 4 or 5 yards of carry. That's his job. Catch balls out of the backfield, extend drives. That's his job. I'm okay with him, not playing at all, getting any, real game reps in the preseason, because I'm a huge hater of the preseason. I think it's honestly, except for like the newer guys, the young guys coming out of colleges, you need some game tape on them to see what they got and they can do in live action. But a guy for Le'Veon Bell is his 5th year in the league, 4th year, somewhere around there. He doesn't really need those touches, those carries. I'm not really worried about that. But you brought up a very good point about him being selfish. As a team player, he should be coming back for that last game. Whether he's just standing on the sideline or not, the fact that he posted a stupid Instagram photo after the game, literally maybe 10 minutes after the game, of him with some, ice on his wrist, big watch and all that kind of crap. Like, dude, you should have been at Heinz Field, whether you're holding out or not, standing on the sideline supporting your teammates. I know it's a professional game. It's not like high school. You don't need that necessarily quite that camaraderie and all that kind of stuff. But, dude, just be a good guy. Don't post 10 minutes after the game, you in some club with, your gold chains on your big watch and stuff like that. Like, people, see that. Like, I saw it. What I think? I'm like, damn, dude, he's selfish. Like, support your team, dude. Like, be out there or be in the weight room. But I don't know. I don't think we have to really question his work ethic. The dude's an animal. And that's one thing I wanted to bring up that we started talking about on the big show was, James Conner losing a lot of weight. I think this might be, a formula that he saw that Le'Veon Bell did coming out of Michigan State. Because coming out of Michigan State, Le'Veon Bell was like 245, 250. He was a big bruiser who, lowered his shoulders, ran people over, and then he came to the NFL and switched up his running style, quite a bit. He lost a lot of weight, cut down on body fat, became more explosive. The jump cut, he, in my opinion, is Mr. Jump Cut at this point. The way he reads the, coming to the hole, is patient, and once he sees that hole, he jumps, cuts, and then he's gone. For like a 5-10 yard explosion through the hole. And I'm thinking that James Conner saw what he's done coming out of college and was trying to emulate Le'Veon Bell. But like you brought up the other night, I don't think that's best for James Conner, though. I don't think he can be as explosive as Le'Veon Bell, have the patience. I think it'd be better for him, put on 15, 20 more pounds, get back up to his college weight and be a bruiser, like a Jerome Bettis type. Obviously, he's not going to be as big as Jerome Bettis because I think that'd be detrimental to him as a running back. But put on 15 pounds and be a bruiser.
Yeah, I don't think running backs can be that big anymore just because of the way the game has evolved with spread offenses. I think Jerome Bettis would have lost weight these days to try to fit into that scheme, kind of like James Conner did. And maybe he does get more explosive. I don't know. But right now, watching him, he didn't have the step. There were a couple of times where I would kind of sit up, wait for him to break it, and he doesn't break it. It kind of reminds me of watching a big upset in college. Someone kind of like a Boise State against, who'd they beat? Oklahoma the one year. They had the great players.
Peterson's team.
Yeah, they had some guys, but you knew that overall they didn't have the same type of athlete that Oklahoma had. So every time they would look like they were going to break one or take a big commanding lead, Oklahoma just came back in, and that's why the game was so exciting, so close. And if you look at that, even across college football, it happens all the time. One team has a roster that's not as talented, not as fast. That's kind of like what it felt like watching James Conner. And that was kind of against not the top number one guys for the Falcons. And that's what scared me. He had me on the edge of the seat thinking he should break this. Then he didn't break it. On the other hand, when you look at guys who are super successful running backs, I think of Chris Johnson when he came out of East Carolina. Fast, he ran he was like a crazy. I think he had fastest 40 time, but he had that breakaway speed at a lower weight. So I think James Conner should just bulk back up and run the style that he's running, where it's one cut, make some guys miss. He took a lot of hits, and if you're losing weight, that's a way to get hurt.
Yeah,
that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid he's going to get hurt, and then Bell has the same issue. He lost weight, like you said. He changed his running style up, and he did have issues when he first started. It took him a while to kind of develop as that explosive out of the back. And I think you mentioned his hands, like something he has to work on.
Yeah, he got exposed on that. Like, especially in the Steelers offense, the way it's I'd say programmed, or the way that they're meant to run it right now. You need a running back out of the backfield that can catch the ball. And for him to have 3 big drops in his first NFL debut game is really, really bad. But I thought he ran the ball well, and I think he's going to be a good backup to Le'Veon Bell, but you made a great point. He doesn't have that breakaway speed. He doesn't have that game-changing speed you want in a starting running back in the NFL. He doesn't got that, but I think he can put himself together like a nice little career, 4 or 5 years, make a lot of money, get a couple touches here and there, but I don't see that explosiveness that's going to separate him from the rest.
Yeah, and he has to be able to catch the ball.
Yeah, hands down.
That is required. He has to catch the ball. If he doesn't catch the ball, why have him in there? Because Ben, he's a scrambler. We've talked about it before. He's going to get outside the pocket and he's going to dump it off. If you're dropping the ball, I would imagine that's going to piss Ben off.
Yeah.
And he's
being
a veteran.
Safety valve.
At this point, he's going to be able to say, like, I know he's not a huge douchebag, so he's not going to be pointing at people and saying, like, get him off the field. But it is going to be disheartening if you end to drive that way. A nice scramble, he dumps it off. It's like a 3rd and short, and it looks like he can catch and run, and he drops it.
Yeah.
Nothing kills a drive like that.
Yeah, momentum's everything in football, and that kills the momentum. And what was it, for like 10 years? Ben had Heath Miller. That was his check down, his safety valve. When all shit went wrong, he scrambled out of the pocket. He knew where Heath Miller was. And now the torch is getting passed to Le'Veon Bell in that running back position. He doesn't have that tight end that he can count on. I don't know if we have anyone that maybe could step up at the tight end position to maybe be that check down guy. But right now it's Le'Veon Bell in the running back position. Even last year, D'Angelo Williams. He gave him the ball a lot of times when things broke down. So if you're James Conner, the first thing you got to worry about is catching the ball out of the backfield, because if you want to play in the NFL for a couple years and you're a Pittsburgh Steeler, you better be able to be a check down for Big Ben, because if you're reliable, he's going to give you the ball and he's going to make sure you're on the field. And right now, if I'm Big Ben, I'm a little nervous about him catching the ball, just to be honest.
Yeah, and that's another thing too with like Le'Veon Bell sitting out, like he's going to lose a little bit of that, and that's why I would have liked to see him get some game reps. You seem to think that he doesn't need them, but you need to have the timing down. The schemes are going to be changed a little bit. It's the NFL. They change schemes every week. He's not in there. All it takes is like, okay, a little bit more of a shuffle here. We're going to make some adjustments where Ben hands the ball off. Maybe he's handing it off 4.5 yards deep in the backfield instead of 5. Something like that where it's throwing off spacing just a little bit. I would have liked to see him get out there with the first team, play one series, to get used to the game flow. And I think you've seen it with other guys who hold out that don't go through that process because he's not practicing either.
No.
So not getting even the practice reps. So even out there, you see it every time. Someone holds out. What happens? They have an awful start to the season. Sometimes it carries over. Yeah, they get hurt. Or they're awful the whole season and they ruin their contract. And a lot of times it bites a team because they extend them before the season and then they have an awful year. And I think teams have gotten wise to it. They just don't care anymore because it's like, hey, now you sat out. Every other team in the NFL sees you as a selfish player. You're not a team player. You left all your guys hanging. I think Ben, maybe it wasn't him. A couple of the Steelers have came out and said that they wish he was there and he needs to be there. Yeah. And that's why I thought he was coming back, and he doesn't. Now, what other team is going to sign you at the end of this year? If that's what you're holding out for, more money, they're not going to give you a multi-year extension after seeing this display. The Rooneys will not.
No, that's what makes me really mad, because what's he getting this year? He's getting the franchise tag. What's $12 million a year? 13? I know next year's going to be bumped up to 15.
Yeah.
If they want to franchise tag him again. So why didn't I heard it was a very, very reasonable offer the Steelers gave him. And you're playing for one of the best franchises, in football. If I had the opportunity to play in the NFL, I'd want to play for a handful of franchises. One would be the Steelers. One, I hate to say it, but God, it'd be the Patriots. I hate them so much, but I'd love to play for them.
I thought you were going to say the Packers there. Oh.
No, Packers number 3. I would love to play for the Packers. Hey, growing up, Brett Favre slinging the rock. We'll always have a little soft spot in my heart for the Packers.
It's cold up there.
Hey, but that'd be hell of fun though. Playing in Green Bay, snowing, November.
What about the Cowboys?
Lambeau Leap.
What about the Cowboys? You can get arrested there. You can do a lot of stuff. They don't care.
Yeah. Hey, at least if I play for the Cowboys, I know I'm never getting cut for foolish behavior, unless I'm the dude who got his identity stolen. Unless I'm him, but
I know. Yeah, I wonder if that was a setup. Jerry Jones paid some guys like, hey, go pretend you're a wide receiver. We need to make some cuts this week.
Yeah, I need to make some cuts and make Zeke look a little scared,
Yeah, get a little PR move on my side that I do cut guys.
Yeah, especially I can't even think of the name, but it was the DM they had last 2 years who had the domestic violence stuff.
Oh, man.
Like, I can't think of his name right now, but
I can
every
picture
person,
him, but I can't think of his name either now.
I can see his face, but it's historical. My one friend Nick, I'm going to call him the Cowboys guru. I'm going to get him on here. The plan, and he better come on, but he's a huge Dez Bryant fan. Okay, for the last couple of years, I've been talking so much shit. Because Dez Bryant was the player who came out of Oklahoma State, I believe.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, Oklahoma State, who needed protection, aka a bodyguard, to make sure he didn't beat up strippers at nightclubs. He was such a child, he's turned into a great NFL player, but
I don't know if I'm saying great. He's decent.
Oh, Dez Bryant can catch the ball. He's definitely number 1 in the NFL. I'll say that.
He hasn't helped them out really.
He's made some big plays over the last couple of years.
He's definitely solid. He'd probably be in the top 10 if I think about it. Game breakers. But I don't know if I'd put him at, I guess we could change the word from great. He's probably, I guess if
very good.
I wouldn't say he's elite.
Okay. So he's not Joe Flacco then. Honestly, I don't think Joe Flacco's elite. That's why I would have put that out there. But that's one thing I heard, like, every year, talking about the, Steelers in the division, you want to bring up the division, Joe Flacco not playing, even though I don't think he's elite, he's a damn good quarterback. He's going to win games for you. But I can tell you this much, Joe Flacco is Jay Cutler. He is not elite. I don't know how the hell he ever won a Super Bowl.
Well, let me just say this. You're a Pitt guy. Why did they cut him? He transferred from Pitt.
Yeah, he went to Delaware State. He couldn't hack it at Pitt. That's why.
So do you think a guy that would be that elite would not play at Pitt?
Oh, no, I agree with you. I don't think he's elite because, I'd hope that Pitt would try to get elite quarterbacks. That's why I'm glad they got the transfer this year from USC. But he's kind of USC's stepchild who couldn't play because they got that quarterback.
Well, speaking of, did you see the promo that they put out? The Panthers did? No,
I didn't.
They announced their starting quarterback, and they had a picture of him. But they put a filter on it so that he looked like a cartoon. But they must have, how you can slide the filter? They slid it almost all the way down so that you couldn't tell it was a filter. But there were, some weird marks on his arm, and I was like, what the hell's up with his arm? Did he have to have surgery? So, of course, I had to zoom in to check that out. Is that a burn mark on his arm? And it's just the filter messed up his skin. I was like, oh wait, that's a cartoon filter. So then I spent a good 10 minutes just scrolling over the rest of the photo. Why did they do that? Why put him in a cartoon filter and not go all out? You couldn't tell it was a cartoon filter until I zoomed in. I'll have to see
half-assed it.
I'll have to see if I can find it. I don't remember where I saw it. It was either on Instagram or on Twitter. But they definitely put a filter on him, and it made him look weird as hell. It messed up his skin color.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, who tweeted that out?
Yeah, I'm not sure. But bringing up Pitt, though, I am really, I have no idea what Pitt's bringing to the table this year. I'm really hoping that quarterback is something. He can play some quality football for Pitt. But thinking about the Pitt-Penn State matchup, that's the only thing on my mind right now. Football season started, and that's the only thing I care about. Because last year I talked so much shit that Pitt was going to beat Penn State. Penn State comes in the Heinz Field, and Pitt put it on them early and did just enough to pull out the victory at 42-39. But I was very, very confident last year with James Conner, the offense, the defense. I thought before the game that Pitt was going to win. But I'll be honest, as a Pitt fan, a Pitt supporter, I am scared that Pitt's going to go into Happy Valley, or like I like to call Creepy Valley, and get blown out. Because Jordan Whitehead's probably arguably their best player on Pitt's team this year. He's the safety. He takes a lot of jet sweeps and stuff. And I'm pretty sure their other best players got hurt. I don't know what they're going to bring, to play Penn State, and I'm really scared they're going to get blown out bad.
Do you really think they're going to get blown out, though? Usually teams that have a defensive-minded coach never get blown out.
Yeah, but I just don't see them having that much talent this year. And they lost 7 guys in the NFL last year. Penn State only lost 1. They have the best running back in the country. It's going to be tough, but you're right. Narduzzi's a defensive mind. He did it for years at Michigan State, had a solid defense. He's had a pretty good defense at Pitt. I do like that, but I just don't see the talent. Whitehead's their best defensive player in the secondary. He's not going to be playing against Penn State. He's suspended, I think, the first 2 games. I'm not really sure, but they picked out a lot of guys suspended. So I don't know if they had a drug bust in Oakland or.
That's what made me worried, because they were suspending guys. And not saying that everyone hits weird things like that. Yeah. But I think it's going to be a lot closer than what people think. I think last year was a pretty big anomaly on Penn State's side, just because of how things shook out.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't win the conference championship when you lose by 40 points.
Yeah.
And to me, it just didn't add up. And I think they're getting overhyped because they played in that shootout with USC. And if you watch that game, that wasn't a great game. Both teams looked pretty bad in that game. Can't tackle, can't play defense. And normally that doesn't bode well. It doesn't matter if they're getting all those guys back if they can't play defense. If you're giving up 40 points, I think that's what they gave up to Pitt last year, 40-something.
42 they gave up to Pitt.
Gave up 40-something to Michigan, 45, 49. I don't even know how bad that game got. Gave up a ton to USC. Like, when you're playing these teams, if you can't stop the ball, I just don't think... Like, that's 3 games last year that they got blown up on defense.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have the best running back. They don't use them to control the game. They just don't. They do the hurry-up offense, so they don't take advantage of the strengths. And I don't know if it's a James Franklin thing. Oh, speaking of, we almost missed it. They extended James Franklin.
I saw that. That's right. I wanted to bring that up.
Which, as a Michigan guy, I love it. Keep him around.
Yeah.
He hasn't beaten us. I don't think he has.
No.
And I think the last one to beat us was Bill O'Brien, which is why I was shocked that he hasn't been able to make that jump with the Texans. But no, keep Franklin around. And maybe this year will be different. Michigan, we only have 1 returning starter. I think everyone else, our recruiting is way better than Penn State. I saw some Penn State guys on the recruiting board trying to say otherwise. This is funny, Jeff. So there was a Penn State guy on there who was adding up the composite roster for this year. He included 2018 recruits because Penn State's currently number 1. And he said...
Of course they do.
His rationale was, well, I didn't include 2014 because we were on sanctions. I thought 2018 would paint a better picture for this year's team. How in the hell does that equate? Those guys aren't even going to be on campus till next year.
No. And that's the funny part. That's right there is why sometimes I get mad at statistics is people paint the picture how they want it to be seen. In 2014, those players are on this current team. The 2018 players aren't. So while I understand the sanctions did diminish that recruiting class, those players are on this team. So the fact that they don't probably have any 5-star recruits out of that class on this team speaks volumes of the depth of this team.
Well, I shared with you before the show, there's basically 2 trains of thought. You can look at the overall talent your roster has, which, of course, 2018's thrown out. And yeah, Penn State might have been on sanctions, but oh well, a lot of other teams have to deal with transfers and whatever. It's basically Penn State doesn't have a senior class. Hey, maybe that pays off for them. I know Michigan, most of our guys are freshmen and sophomore. If you look at our talent composite, almost all our seniors and even our juniors went pro early last year. 11 NFL draft picks. So Penn State can't say, oh, well, we don't have a senior class because of that. Michigan doesn't have a senior class because they went pro.
Yeah.
Well, does the circumstance matter? No, they're not there. You lose a good bit of talent either way. So looking at the overall talent, still, they haven't put them out yet. So I'm not 100% sure on the final 10. Or normally what happens is the national championship team has come from the overall top 10. Like they have to have a top 10 roster across college football to win the national championship, or at least that's what happened in the past. Every team that's won a national championship had a top 10 roster for that year. And 24/7 Sports, which is owned by CBS, they do like a composite roster. They did say that they're going to put it out about right before the season because they want the team rosters to be as close as possible to opening day. And of course, this doesn't take effect for injuries or whatever. But 10 teams is a pretty big thing because only 4 of them make playoffs. So if someone gets hurt, someone drops out, I'm sure we'll be bringing that up eventually. Another one. There's some weird feedback. I don't know if anyone else can hear that or if that's just me. But another look at it is called the blue chip ratio. And what that looks at, and we haven't even talked about this on the big show yet, is how many 4- and 5-star recruits are on your team. And of course, this isn't looking at, I know a lot of recruits don't pan out, but they are saying that if over half of your team, 50% or more of your team, is made up of these blue chip recruits, 4- or 5-star guys, then you have a chance to win the national championship. If your roster's under that, you might make the playoffs, but you're not going to win. Historically, you haven't won. No one has won a championship with less than 50%. I think even Urban Meyer at Florida had a 55%. That was one of the lower ones. Usually it's 60 or above, but general terms, it's 50 or above. And Bud Elliott from SB Nation, he put out his list because he calculates this each year. And he said there are 10 teams that have it. And these are in order: Alabama, Ohio State, LSU, Florida State, Georgia, USC, Michigan, Auburn, Clemson, and Notre Dame. So those are the 10 teams. When we're going to be tweeting this out, I'm going to be sharing his article if you want to read all about it, because it's good at analytics. It's good. It's solid. Like I said, they've been doing these since what? Recruiting has been big online since like 1998, I want to say. I think 24/7 actually says since 19-something. Oh, there says since 2000. So basically 17 years, every national championship team has had a top 10 talent component and at least a 50% blue chip ratio. So I don't know if when the talent composites released right before football season, that might knock that 10-team list down a little bit more. But we'll see. And maybe this year will be the year a team finally breaks that. Oregon was close a few years ago. Got to the national championship game, even in the playoffs. Lost to Ohio State that year. So teams have been close, but they just haven't done it. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, you brought this up before the show, and this is one thing I really like. This is hard analytics that makes sense. I will say this: as much as I hate Penn State, in 2014, they had a 21% blue chip ratio. In 2017, now they're at 41. They have the highest net rise out of any major Division I school at 20% net rise. Now, what I think is interesting, as I'm looking through this article you sent me, the team out of the major Division I schools that have the worst, decline, Florida in 2014 was at 54%. They're currently sitting at 37 in 2017 with a negative 17% decrease, which is interesting because our Michigan Wolverines are playing Florida first game of the year this year. And what was it the coach said? I know you know this more than me, but he was talking shit, saying essentially the first game of the year they're going to put a thumping on Michigan. It's not going to happen. When you look at these rosters, through the entire roster and look at this ratio, It just makes sense. The more talented your roster is, the better chance you're going to win it all. So, you brought up the top 10 there. The crazy thing to me is Alabama, year in and year out, has the best blue chip ratio. They bring in the best talent, but they don't necessarily win it, win the national championship. But I like that you said since 1999, every team that's won the national championship has been in that, 50% or above category. And guess what? Penn State isn't in it. But in the AP pool, they're sitting at number 6 currently. I think that's ridiculous. I don't think they're the 6th best, team in the country. They're not even in the top 10 here. You have Michigan at 11. I think Penn State's the 3rd best team in the Big Ten, personally. I think Ohio State, and you just look at this list here, that says it all. They would be the 3rd best team in the Big Ten based on this list.
Well, the list doesn't have Wisconsin on, though. So
that's a good point.
Overall, because he only lists, I don't know if he actually has a full list somewhere. Yeah. Looking at, I don't see like his entire list. He probably has it somewhere, not on the article that I have up. But overall, Penn State, I think the reason they're getting the hype is they won the conference last year, and going through, it's just going to be how many guys did they lose. That's what Florida's having right now. I think I've been doing some recon before the Florida game when Michigan plays them, because I think we're going to try to do, or I'm at least going to try to do, a live show before the game start on Saturday. I'm not sure what time. I haven't worked out the details. I might get a trial run this weekend because Stanford plays. Don't forget, Stanford plays on Saturday night. And the McGregor-Mayweather fight is Saturday. Yeah. So it's a big night. I might go ahead and try to do a little test stream, just a little bit of a show. But I think Florida only loses 5 starters. So, even though their overall talent drops, it's first game of the season. If Michigan played Florida at the end of the year, I would be 100% confident it would turn out just like the last time we played them in the bowl game. I think it was Citrus Bowl. It was like 41-7 or 41-10 or something like that.
Yeah, I think I was in high school when they played. That might have been like 2011 or something like that. That was a couple of years ago, right?
No, that was Harbaugh's first year. That was 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. I'm mistaken then.
Well, Florida has lost to us every time they played us. And they played like 3 times, and this is recent. This isn't like, Michigan must have beat them in 1952. No. Every time, they played 3 times since 2000, and I'm not sure the years. One of them was an Urban Meyer year with Tim Tebow, but Michigan's beat them 3 times. So Michigan's 3-0 against Florida. The talent is there. Like I said, the thing that scares me for Michigan's side, most of the starters or most of the blue chip guys are freshmen or sophomores. And only 1 starter is returning this year for Michigan. So it's a lot of fresh faces. And there is a chance that that starter returning is a quarterback, Wilton Speight. But he's supposed to be in a battle with O'Korn. I'm a little scared with O'Korn just because if you can't move the ball in Indiana, it's going to scare me. And he couldn't get that done last year. Had a chance to get Michigan up. He could have played against Ohio State, to be honest, if he came out slinging the ball. But he looked scared, and then we had to have it hurt Wilton Speight playing that game, which, he kept us in it. A good quarterback play might have won, or probably would have won that game, because he threw in a pick 6, I think, late in the half or right after halftime that swung the momentum.
Yeah.
But it's only 2nd year for Harbaugh. He hasn't got his guys in. They're starting to come in. That's why our blue chip ratio is growing. I think we're one of the biggest movers, and we already had 55%. So getting up there, getting that upper echelon, Penn State, they're on the right trajectory. Could it be a gauntlet in 2 or 3 years? The Big Ten East could be. Penn State, if Franklin keeps growing up there. But this is the big year. He has to show up. Penn State cannot fall out of the top 10. If they fall out of the top 10, he's going to lose all of his momentum. Because next year, Michigan's losing no one. They're losing some seniors and stuff, but everyone's going to be there. And overall number 1 recruit's a sophomore, Rashawn Gary. They signed him 2 years ago. He's going to be, hopefully, a beast this year. He'll be back, and he'll be the team leader. And you better believe that when you have a blue chip ratio getting into the 60s, and Coach Harbaugh is there, it's going to be bad. Plus, Urban Meyer is always going to have a solid team. Are you going to fall perennially, if I can even talk, to the number 3 team, Penn State? I don't know. This 2018 recruiting class has to stick for them. They have to have a good year. If they have a bad year, some of these top recruits could go elsewhere, and that would start a decline. I mean, Franklin, he's only won 2 or 3 bowl games, and they were like the Music City Bowl, Tax Slayer Bowl, maybe the Pinstripe Bowl. Hasn't won a big bowl game.
Nah. That's the one thing, if I'm a Penn State fan, I'd be very scared of, because when it comes to college recruiting, name recognition is number one. Penn State has great name recognition throughout the entire country historically. However, though, every school in the Big Ten, I'd say in the top 4, has better name recognition at head coach. So that's why I find it, surprising they went ahead. James Franklin has been successful. There's no doubt about that. But when you're sitting down with, high school kids trying to recruit them, and you have offers from, let's say, the Big 3. Let's put Penn State in the Big 3. When you have an offer from Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, and you're weighing out your options, and you're like, maybe I'll go play for James Franklin, or I can go play at Michigan for Harbaugh, or I can go play at Ohio State for, Urban Meyer. Who are you going to pick? You're probably going to pick Michigan or Ohio State just on name recognition and, head coach. They're the 2 head coaches I'd want to play for. I hate Ohio State, but I'm telling you right now, I would love to play college football under Urban Meyer. He's a hell of a coach. He wins games. So when you're a young kid, 17 years old, and you're looking at, who would I, want to go play college football for? You're going to pick John Harbaugh or Urban Meyer. And you know what? You might even pick Dan Antonio at Michigan State over James Franklin. He doesn't have the clout the other ones do. He didn't win at Vanderbilt. He is having a little bit of success at Penn State. But at the end of the day, you're going to pick one of the big head honchos, and you're going to want to win a Big Ten championship. And I know right there that sounds silly that I said that, because Penn State won it last year. But year in and year out, Urban Meyer and John Harbaugh need the best opportunity to win a Big Ten championship and go after that national championship.
Yeah, it's Coach Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, John. I kept saying John.
He's
My
still,
bad.
You
yeah,
still
he's
you love
coaching the Ravens.
Yeah, you love Flacco that much.
Yeah.
Then all Harbaughs are John to you.
Yeah, it's just I was getting on a roll there, and I'm sorry, Jim. I'm very sorry. Just got on a roll there with John.
But I could argue that Penn State isn't even the top 3 in the league if you're going like name recognition, because Nebraska's definitely better than them. Maybe Wisconsin. Not now, because they've had some weird coaching hires, and they shouldn't really got rid of Pelino. I mean, and then brought in whoever they brought in. It was like a weird trade between them and Wisconsin and Oregon State that happened in the West to kind of like set Paul Chryst up.
Yeah.
Which I know you probably hate because he left Pitt, but he has the same record, I think, as Harbaugh at Wisconsin, which is crazy. I know the West is way weaker. I've seen people predict Nebraska in the championship. I would rather see that, just on the odd chance that Michigan does make the Big Ten championship, they play Wisconsin the next to last week. I would hate them have to play Wisconsin, Ohio State, and then Wisconsin again.
Yeah.
Vary it up a little bit, because the schemes are going to be fresh. And after playing Ohio State, that's a big different than Wisconsin. Who did they play last week? Minnesota, I think. Like there's a pretty big gap there. That's kind of like a rest week for them. And I think you saw it last year going into the Big Ten championship. They had the scheme to beat Penn State. Penn State didn't have any scheme. They just started throwing the ball up.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But I don't want to talk too much on it. I feel like I'm taking over your show. So
no, it's all good, dude. Trust me, the Big Ten gets me fired up. I'm a huge Penn State hater, Pitt supporter, Michigan fan growing up. You know that. Like growing up, Michigan was my team. I'll always remember this. Growing up, I was like 7th or 8th grade. It was Chad Henne's year when Mike Hart was still running back. You had Mario Manningham at receiver. I thought that was the national championship year. And oh my God, did I get made fun of at school. because Appalachian State went into Michigan and got upset. I'll never forget that. I talked so much shit for like 2-3 weeks coming up the college football, season about how it was Michigan's year for the national championship because they had the offense. Back then, Chad Henne was phenomenal at quarterback. He didn't pan out in the NFL. Mario Manningham had a pretty good NFL career. Mike Hart, though, I honestly don't remember what happened to him, but he was a hell of a running back in college. I think he set some records at Michigan even, if I remember correctly. But that offense was dynamic. And oh my God, did they shit the bed that year. I think they had some key injuries, though, that hurt them. I don't remember correctly, but I was all in on Michigan that year, and it was rough.
They beat really Florida that year. That was the year they beat Tim Tebow in one of the January Bowls.
Oh, yeah.
They rebounded from that. I don't know if they won 9 or 10 games that year. But, yeah, loaded roster. That's why Michigan's young this year. They were young with those same core group of guys you named in 2006 when they almost went it undefeated. And they were undefeated. Them and Ohio State played that really close game in 2006, I believe. So that's why, if Michigan's young this year, I'd rather see them make a run. These guys could be hungry. I'm glad to see that they're in the top 10, the final cut there for the blue chip ratio, and I hope that the overall talent roster list, whenever that comes out, I hope they're in the top 10 there as well, because that bodes well for the future. And normally, I saw some Florida guys, they were putting together a list of top teams that have played better rosters, and usually if you're playing against a better roster, you lose.
Yeah.
So just having a comparable roster, because anyone in the top 10, no matter how many blue chips Alabama has, the difference between 60 and 80 is a lot closer because you can't play that many guys at the same time. There's a bigger gap between say 60 and 40. Whenever you only have that many blue chips that are going to be on the field at the same time, you don't have the depth. But once you get up, that's why Alabama, even though they have so many guys, they don't win as much as they should, because a lot of those guys they're going to redshirt them. They're going to go ahead. They're going to have to transfer. They're not going to see the field. You can't play 80% of your guys that are blue chip. You just can't. So
yeah, there's not enough spots on the field for them.
And I think that's why the cutoff is 50%, because 85% of your roster, that's what? 50% is what? 40 guys? Most of the time in a year, that's how many guys you're going to play. A lot of those other guys, I think the traveling roster is only, 45? I could be wrong. It might be 50. I might be thinking of the NFL.
Usually it's right around the 70 or 80 mark, because they have 105 usually players. They have 80 scholarship or 85 scholarships, 20 walk-ons usually. I think the whole team's 105, yeah.
I didn't know. Let's take a look and see.
Traveling team might be 60, actually, the more I think about it. But I know they have
I know. What's the NFL? Is the NFL
53-man roster?
Yeah, it's 53. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of with 50. But I do know that the traveling roster for football is less, I believe. Maybe you are right. Maybe it is a lot more than I think it is.
Yeah, I know you can have 101 or 105 Division I football players. I'm pretty sure 20 are walk-on, 85 scholarships.
Yeah, and how many can you have? So this is nowhere legit. But you can have, this says most teams limit themselves to between 60 and 70 active players. A lot of them are practice squad only, but that doesn't tell me how many travel with the team.
Yeah.
Because at home, at a home game, if you're on the practice squad, whatever, you can be in the stadium. You might not be dressed, but those sidelines are packed.
Yeah, well, that was like me when I played at Pitt. I was a walk-on. I got to dress for every home game, which was awesome. So we had 105 people dressed at the home games because that's how many was on the total roster.
Yeah.
But I don't remember the travel. So my freshman year, I would have loved to, but I didn't get to travel to WVU because I wasn't on the travel roster. I was just a red shirt walk-on. So I didn't get to travel to WVU. I did, though, however, get to go to the bowl game, which was an amazing experience. That's why I can't comprehend the big schools, because unfortunately, when I played at Pitt, we were still in the Big East. We weren't one of the big schools. We weren't one of the ones, winning championships. But my freshman year, we played in the BBVA Compass Bowl in Birmingham, Alabama, and we got smoked by SMU. It was ugly. Tino Sincere was still our quarterback that year, and I'm pretty sure he got sacked 6 times in the first half. It was ugly. I remember looking around the stadium like, all right, there's no one here, and everyone's watching us get smacked on ESPN. Because I can't remember, it was like I think we were one of the last bowl games before the national championship, like January 7th or something like that. So all eyes were on us, and SMU was putting on us bad. It was ugly. But at least for that, got some cool gear, got a couple $100 of like merchandise and shit, got some beats, got some Oakley shit. It was great. It was a great experience. And then I had to come back to Pittsburgh to snow for my first day of classes because we went down to Alabama. It was like damn near 80 degrees in January. It was awesome. But come back to Pittsburgh and there's snow. You get out the airport there and it's like, holy crap, dude, I forgot how this is, it was snowing up in Pittsburgh and we went down there and it was really nice. But yeah, I think on the travel teams you have like, I want to say it was like 65, 70.
It looks like
travel.
If it's on the Alabama recruiting board here, they said that they think that the visiting team can bring 70 dressed guys.
70, okay. That sounds about right.
So yeah, even if you're at the 50% of 85, which is what they look at for the blue chip ratio, that's 40-something guys. Mm-hmm. Offense and defense, you play 11 at best. So, I mean, you're not going to rotate out. Some of those guys that are blue chip are probably backup quarterbacks and stuff that aren't going to see the field anyway, unless there's an injury. So, I mean, it makes sense. If half your team dressed is a blue chip recruit, yeah, of course you have a chance at winning the national championship. So, it makes sense. And I don't know. Like, I just think if Penn State wants to do it in the long run, they have to do it this year. If they drop a game to Pitt, man, does that swing everything in Pitt's favor. Yeah,
because honestly, last year, it's the whole win the state thing. James Franklin was, making that his slogan, win the state. And, in a lot of people, Penn State fans' mind, Pitt's like the little brother there, on the left of the state. But Pitt put it on them last year. And if they lose again 2 years in a row at home to Pitt, that's going to swing the entire table for Pat Narduzzi in his recruiting. Because I know Pitt's been recruiting a lot in Maryland and Ohio, and they've got a lot of guys in the Whitfield from Pittsburgh. They always have, they always will. That's their home territory. But if they beat, Penn State again at home, they're going to start taking a lot of those recruits that, Penn State pulls out of Philly. And if you could take the Philly kids and the Pittsburgh kids, watch out because Pitt will be pretty good. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, that's what was happening whenever they had the Dan Marino years.
Yeah, they were getting.
If you're ever to pull from both ends of the state, and even if they could get, it looks like Michigan, we've had like a lock hold on the New Jersey area. But even, I think that's what puts Penn State at a disadvantage. When you look at Penn State's great years, they were pulling from Philadelphia and New Jersey. Have to pull from both areas. Pitt was getting people from Ohio, Pittsburgh, and Philly, and a little bit of West Virginia. Now it's kind of like been narrowed, been squeezed, because you can't have, it's just too tough. You can't have too many good teams in the same area and be successful. I mean, look at what Alabama's doing. Their success has kind of crushed the SEC. Now it's basically them and 13 little buddies.
Yeah, and that's a great point you brought up. Just to build upon that, if you look at that, the Northeast area right now, you have Penn State, pretty good, Michigan, Ohio State, Pitt's been playing pretty good football. Now WVU last year, I think WVU went 10-2. I live down in Morgantown now, so I'm really paying attention to what WVU. People are going to hate on that, that I'm a Pitt guy, caring about WVU. But hey, I live down here now. Yeah, exactly. You're talking shit on that. But hey, I live down here now, and I'm trying to pay attention. There's a lot of hype down there this year with this game, and we had that Twitter troll talking shit. Was it 2 weeks ago about the first game of the season? Because I think WVU is going to put it on Virginia Tech, first game of the year. That's over in Hanover, Maryland at what's it, FedEx Field? I can't remember the name of it, but they're playing at the Redskins Stadium.
It's FedEx. Well, you never know how often they change these names, but
yeah, but currently it's FedEx. Yeah, so they're playing the Hokies there to start off the season, and I think it's the first time in over 10 years they're playing each other, and they have one of those trophies they play for and everything, and I think WVU is going to bring that trophy back to Morgantown first week of the season, but. I don't want to bring that up, but if you look at the Northeast, you have some major Division I schools that are all competing for the same kids, and everyone always tries to recruit out of Florida. Everyone always has, always will. But that's why in the 80s and, the 80s and then the early 2000s, Miami was so good. They got every single Florida kid in those recruiting classes. And now you look at the last couple of years, it's been, the recruiting dynamics has kind of shifted to Florida State. That's why Florida State's had, recent success in the late 2000s. The Tim Tebow years, Florida had those, most of those recruits. But it's really crazy if you look at the Northeast, everyone's kind of getting a piece of the pie. But then if you look in SEC country, Alabama gets everyone. It's unbelievable. And then you have Florida down there with Florida State taking most of those kids these days. But it's really interesting how the geography of college recruiting shifts. But that's one thing I'd say in the last 25, 30 years, everyone has been recruiting the heck out of Texas, Florida, Pennsylvania. Those are some of the hotbeds. Obviously, California has tons of recruits year in and year out. You have USC, Oregon, UCLA. You have a bunch of those big schools. Stanford takes a lot of people, but it's very interesting to see the Northeast in the last couple of years rise to the top.
Well, I think the reason the recruiting has kind of opened up for these Northeast teams is due to the Big East failing.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Now that a lot of those teams that used to get, because you had West Virginia in the top 10, Cincinnati in the top 10, Louisville in the top 10, Pitt in the top 10. Who else? South Florida, because they were playing in those northern states up against, they were taking the New Jersey kids because Rutgers was great for a while there. I think Rutgers was ranked really high. And then the Big East fell apart, and all I think that did was just strengthen the big guys. Strengthen Ohio State, strengthen Michigan, strengthen Notre Dame. Because now they didn't have to compete with another conference. If you look at that blue chip ratio, those three teams are in that top 10 because they're able to go ahead and pick. They're not battling Syracuse anymore. Syracuse is in the ACC. All they have to do is show them a picture of the stadium and say, hey, do you want to play in front of 1,000 fans or do you want to play in front of a full 100,000? Penn State can show a photo of that. Ohio State and Michigan can all show photos of 100,000 plus. And you look at some of the ACC attendance. I tweeted one out of Miami, empty. That's why they're not getting the kids. Miami used to play Notre Dame every year. Miami used to play up and down the East Coast. Now they're in the ACC. They're playing who? They're in a weird, they don't even have a good conference split. I think if the ACC switched to a North-South division, and I've argued this with Matt before, I think Miami would be back. I think the ACC would then be one of the top, if not the top conference, because it's the same thing you're seeing when the Big Ten made that switch. Now they have to recruit against each other, Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State, or they lose every year. Right now, Miami's kind of thinking like, oh, we can win our division. It's weak. We only have to play Virginia Tech, Duke. I mean, their real big game is only Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Pitt now, but I mean, they have until they win the division. I really can't count them out. Who else is in that division?
They're not there yet. UNC's in that one too, I believe.
Yeah, North Carolina's going to have a down year. I was talking to an alum of them yesterday, actually, and an Alabama guy who was telling me that Alabama, he thinks their defense is going to be the weak point this year. So he's a little bit worried going into that Florida State game. But he's actually confident that they can win the SEC anyway. And yeah, that's when you're looking at it. Unproven D, he thinks they can drop the Florida State game and run the table.
Yeah, and if they win the SEC the way the playoff system is, they win the SEC, they're in the Final Four, hands down. And especially the SEC bias is crazy. We talk about that all the time. They'll get in the Final Four.
And there's a chance that they play Florida State again. And I would hope that that's the first round matchup. Because I would like to see that, a rematch of that. I wouldn't like to see a rematch in the national championship. No. I'd rather have them, because this has come up before, and we're running long. We're over an hour now. It's your show, so if you want to cut it, just let me know. But once you get to that final playoffs, I'd rather have them make the rematch in the first round. Because if you remember a few years ago, they had a rematch of Alabama and LSU in the national championship, and that game bombed. Like, I think Alabama took a big lead, and then everyone was kind of complaining like, well, they shouldn't have been playing in the national championship and all this other stuff because it was a rematch. The game wasn't exciting. I know a lot of sponsors.
Bunch of field goals.
Yeah, a lot of sponsors kind of got upset and stuff. So now with the playoffs, they can kind of get out of that if they match them up in the first round. Because let's say Florida State does run all over Alabama's defense, and then you put them up, and then they play in the national championship again. Do you think people are going to tune in for that? Casual fans, I don't know if they will. But they can go ahead and make that rematch in the first round. I mean, that's the round that they've had trouble getting people to view anyway. So I don't know.
Which is really surprising me because a lot of times that's a more exciting one.
Well, there's been blowouts. The Big Ten hasn't showed up the past 2 years. So there's 2 big blowouts, those games, for half of the playoffs. And it's been in a weird spot because they put them like on New Year's Eve. It's like some weird stuff. They were trying to force it. And with social media and stuff, sports just doesn't work anymore on New Year's Eve. They might have been able to own that day if they started this 20 years ago, before everyone had the internet and everyone had to do everything on their television, and they had started that habit 20 years ago. Okay, let's watch some college football, then let's watch the ball drop. But you can't start that now, because now it's been conditioned to let's go and watch the ball drop. Let's go to our friend's house. Let's go drink some beers. Let's go club, and let's go watch a ball drop, because then you get to make out with someone.
Yeah, dude, that's the funniest part. Like, I'm one of the biggest football fans in the entire world. I don't watch really with those games. I'm out bar hopping on New Year's Eve. So I look at Twitter and I'm like, all right, he's winning. You know what I mean? I'm watching the game on Twitter. I'm not tuning in. I'm not that invested in that game. Last year, me and my friends all went out in Morgantown. I didn't even know what the hell was going on half the time with the football games.
Well, I think the late game was that blowout game. Well, at least I'm pretty sure it was the 2 years ago when it was Michigan State. Like, that game started at like 9 or 10 o'clock, and it was going to end right before the ball dropped, and it got like 15-21 nothing within that first half, and then everyone tuned out.
Yeah.
Because they're like, this game's over. No need. And if I see, like you said, you can check Twitter, and if you see that they're making a comeback, turn it back on, but they didn't. And no one turned it back on, and the ratings were awful. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, I think that's, we touched on a lot of good things tonight. Like you said, we're running long, so I think I want to cut it there. It was great talking to you, like always. For the listeners out there, Southbound Sports, we're doing this show, Spaces and Laces, and we're also doing the big show we're going to refer to from now on Tuesday nights. So tune in. They have theirs live on Periscope. I'm going to record mine because I have a crazy work schedule right now. I don't know, what shift I'm working or when I can, do a live show on Thursday. So just tune in. I'll be posting them on social media, Twitter, Instagram, definitely on YouTube. So check us out on social media, like I said, on social media, YouTube, whatever. And
we're going to try to do some shorter stuff too. So it's not going to be like the longer show. So I know, Jeff, we're trying to get some interviews lined up for Spaces or Laces, trying to call out some guys who've been trolling us. Of course, we invite them on the show, and then they stop trolling. Funny how that works out.
Yeah, they want to get in front of a mic or call in or anything. They get a little gunshot on that one.
Yeah, so, I mean, we're trying, and I'm going to be putting out, like I said, I'm going to try to do a little bit of a pregame, maybe a postgame, depending on, I tested it way back, doing live recording during the Super Bowl last year for a podcast, and I had a lot of fun, even if I just do a live stream on Periscope, like the halftime of the Michigan game. I know some games I'm going to be amped up, depending on if we end up going to a game. We're trying to plan out some stuff like that, do some live stuff. So
yeah,
definitely check us out. Share us with your friends. Jeff will be doing Spaces or Laces every week, and we'll be bringing a lot of good content to you.
And just want to mention too, like Richie said, we're planning on going to a couple games this year. We're going to try to do some tailgating things, other stuff like that. So thanks for tuning in. As always, I'm your host, Jeff Meyer. It was nice seeing you guys.